Statistics and Excel. Typing mathematical equations in Microsoft Office. Got data? Let's get stuck into it with statistics and Excel. Although we'll be using OneNote here, we'll still talk about Excel. You're not required to, but if you have access to OneNote, we're in the icon left-hand side, OneNote presentation 1410, typing mathematical equations in Microsoft Excel tab. We're also uploading transcripts to OneNote so that you can use the immersive reader tool, changing the language if you so choose, being able to either read or listen to the transcripts in multiple languages, tying them into the video presentations using the timestamps. OneNote desktop version here. In these presentations, we've been thinking about statistical concepts using Excel as our primary tool to understand those concepts as well as test those concepts out. Now, although Excel is clearly a great tool for understanding statistical concepts, it does have its downsides, even if we understand how to use Excel well, because it's basically another tool in the toolkit, and then we have to think about, when we have these multiple great tools, which tool do I need to use for any particular problem when I'm trying to understand any particular concept. In this case, we're looking at formulas, equations. So if I have an equation, if I have a formula, how should I go about representing that equation? And how should I go about basically solving and working with that equation? And obviously our options could include, we could simply write down the equation, and then if it's an algebraic equation, we might try to solve for it algebraically. There's still a place for that even if we have Excel, because sometimes that's just the best way to do it. Another way that we might do it is we might put it into Excel. We might use that equation, but then work through the algebra in a table type of format in Excel, breaking it out in Excel, kind of like you'd see in like a tax return. And that's just another way to look at the data. And it's quite useful oftentimes when you write it down algebraically, your mind is thinking algebraically. When you break down a formula into like a tax return kind of format, right? You break down each algebraic step into a table as if you're making a worksheet, then that also makes you think differently as well about the concepts that are included in the formula. Clearly, Excel also has functions for many things, as we have seen, like the mean or the average, the quartiles, the medians, and so on. So when we use a function in Excel, that's a great tool as well, although it cuts out a lot of the steps so that it makes it so that sometimes those steps make it easier for understanding what's happening, as well as they sometimes give us useful information that we might need or might be useful for us for whatever decision we're making. So right now we just want to think about how to write down the formula. So this is a formula that's basically representing an average, where we're going to say x bar equals, and then we're going to say x1, x2. These are going to be the data points in a data set up to xn. Xn then representing how many data points are in the set, and then we divide it by n. That's our average, right? We're going to add up all the numbers in the data set x1 to xn and divide by how many numbers are in the data set, or n. We can also represent that this way. So x bar, or the mean, or the average, equals, and now we've got this sum icon here, and we're going to say n is going to be representing the number of items that we're going to sum up, the list of numbers, where we start with I equals 1, and then we go x of I. So we're summing up in the numerator again, just like we have up top, and then down below we're going to be dividing by the number of items. Other things that it's useful to be putting in, like anything, whether it be Excel or it be some other Office product, sometimes it could be a little confusing to type something like an X bar, or we're going to be using sigma, a sigma squared, a mu, the Greek letters. So sometimes it's useful to be able to type those out. Obviously, if we were writing this algebraically out by hand, you have some pros and cons. The pros are it's not too difficult to write an X bar by hand and an X sub 1 and that kind of stuff, but your handwriting might not be great, and it might be nice to have it in Excel as well in a formula format so that we can then work through it within Excel. And then if you're writing in something that you want to give to someone else, then oftentimes you're in something like this, OneNote, or you might be in Microsoft Word, or you might be in Excel, and you want to be able to write maybe a formula that looks like this, or you might want to be writing something down in your equations that have these kind of Greek letters. So how do we do that? Let's do each of these formulas. I can go to this one up top. We go to the Insert tab up top, and then in whatever Microsoft product you are in, you'll typically have this equation item here. So if we go into the equation item, it pulled in an equation bar down here. Let me do that somewhere else so it's not on top of this thing. I'll go to Insert Equation. So there's my equation bar. Now when you're in this equation bar, you've got all these tools that you can use that will allow you to basically build any kind of equation that looks kind of like this. You can build it with these tools, but the easiest thing to do, which is obviously what I go for here, is going for the inc equation. So if we just go into the inc equation, it gives you this thing to write the equation in, and it tries to interpret it. If you have a pen like thing, like a notepad or something, then it'll be even easier. I'm just doing it with a mouse and I can still do it, and my writing's terrible. And so let's try it out. So if I'm going to put an X on this side, X bar, and so you can see it writes this out up top, and then I'm going to say it's equal to, and it looks like it's picking it up, and I'm going to say X sub 1 and so it's picking it up here, plus X, and then we'll say sub 2. So that looks good, plus X, and see, me writing with the mouse looks pretty much like I write with my pencil. It's like about